I would say let's jump right in. In terms of user acquisition, let's say audience members have a game that they want to publish, they want to get users on. How to do it? What's the best user acquisition channel that you guys feel like people should look into? Maybe Vasily, can you give some feedback there? You're obviously from one of the titans there.
Yeah, I mean, first, I mean, yeah, Google is definitely something that you will have at some point. To be fair, I would say that if you're like gaming developer who just launched your game and you don't know yet if it's viable or not, if it's like will you be able to scale it and so on and so forth, and if you're willing to just test, for example, if Tuya or anything like this, I'm not sure. So Google will not be the only channel. Let's be honest there. I mean, there are other big gaming like platforms, big platforms like Meta and Unity and other. And we know that some people are starting there, and it's fine. So, like if you're start anywhere you can find the cheapest insights. So, because for first you need to find insights. Then, so for Google, we do know that we are working very well on a scale and on a long-term basis. So when you know your product is working, you're easily you will be easily scaling with us if you are able to like to bring your LTV higher than customer acquisition cost. So this is my point of view, and I will happily.
All right. So you mentioned scalability, obviously, with Google as one of the largest platforms. Would you be able to differentiate a bit? I mean, Google is a lot, right? Google is not just Google; it's also YouTube, for example, that you're working on. Are you talking about pay-per-click on Google specifically, or is it more on the YouTube side? Can you share a bit of more specifics?
So I would say first, if you're launching a mobile game, then you have no other choice than launching ad campaigns, which will not give you any choice of where to go. And to be fair, it's good. I mean, before app campaigns, I joined Google in 2016, and there was no app campaigns back in the day. And when it was introduced, the first reaction from the market was easily, let us control everything and we will be better than you. Then we've seen the massive upscale of app campaigns, which was driven by, to be fair, machines are better than people when it comes to managing the campaigns, the traffic between channels. It has much more signals than we do have, like people. And so when you're launching something at Google in mobile, I'm saying it about mobile because in web it's a little bit different situation. If you're launching in mobile, then you have only option, it's sub campaigns, and it will work pretty good. The traffic goes from Play Store, Play Browse, Play Search, YouTube, all the searches like YouTube search, Google search, anything. Then it goes from AdMob, which is obviously our biggest network, and yeah, I mean, if you're looking at like where to start, this is like a very good option to start. And there are different optimization types. There are like install. You can start from optimizing towards install, then go to CPA, go to ROAS, which is obviously what you want to do at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And there are all the optimization options in the room for any publisher. And again, let's be honest there. So we have Android and iOS, and this works very different across two different platforms. And we do know that on iOS, so if you will rely on like exact measurement, so we will like be different. So I mean, there are other platforms that allow other options to analyze the traffic.
Yeah.
We do not provide this option.
Awesome. Thank you. That was very helpful. Gunay, with GameLight, can you share a couple of insights? Where would you add to what Vasily mentioned?
For UA of our apps, in general, I think the best approach would be what also Vasily mentioned shortly, the trying to find what works best. And initially, I think everyone starts with Google, which makes sense because I think it works for everyone too. But then instead of putting all the budgets in the same thing. It's better to try different ones. For example, the same Unity account and maybe with some reward source, put some on Meta or some other social networks, because chances are that they will work quite differently, and might be that one of them works better and you might just tap into something new to now onboard more partners within this direction. Like if video networks worked for you or rewarded worked for you better, you should then add more budgets there. And if you would just focus on one, you would never know. Plus this also would add up that if you run only 3 channels, if you're on Google and Meta only, for example, any fluctuations there means fluctuation on your total business, because if your Google budgets went down, the whole business went down and then up. But more you have and more different there will be less fluctuations and more stable business that you run.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. Imran, with your big background in digital marketing in general and now at your position at Payoneer, can you add some insights?
So I'll give you a slightly different approach. What the panelists were saying, it's a right approach in terms of how do we position our game. But if we take a step back, if I'm a new developer coming out, I need to look at my strategy from a very full funnel approach. Mm-hmm. Where to get people searching about my game, I need to build awareness about my game. Mm-hmm. So which can happen either through digital assets or through the community, like how do people subscribe us or find us. So we have to always find that balance of having a full funnel approach where certain platforms work to build awareness, and someone mentioned about Unity ads as a DSP, but then there are platforms like Ad Colony, Adform, where we can start small, and the leverage in terms of audiences is big. Mm-hmm. And with that awareness coming on, I'm sure we have to invest in platform on Google, Meta and Facebook because of the consumer reach which these platforms have built in this DNA. But to get that awareness, people testing, writing reviews, and that becomes content. So that storytelling will come about my product from the people who have used, who have found us at various community events or various community association, will help leverage these channels better. So if we add those elements, I'm sure we'll have a very watertight strategy for launching a new game.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Talking about user acquisition in general, when we deep dive into this, let's make a practical example, because I think that's the easiest for the audience to understand. I'm also doing this for completely selfish reasons because we're launching a mobile game. So I would like to hear from you guys as experts on how specifically to do that. So we're launching Stray Shot. It's a mobile game, but also on PC. But let's focus on mobile for the start. Vasily, where would you start exactly? So you mentioned the app campaign. You would go in there and advertise, obviously. Can you share a couple of the insights? Because you were an analyst before. What kind of CPMs could I expect? What kind of cost per installs? Like all of that expert know-how that you guys all have. I'm pretty sure that everybody's very keen on learning from that.
I would ask you some questions before.
Sure.
So your game, is it primarily, so what stage is it on right now? I mean, is it like you're ready to start it, like you're ready to scale it, or you're just soft launching or tech launching it?
Excellent question, and I think that's one of the important points, right? When you launch a game, should you just say, hey, I'm finished with the development and let's launch it, right? Yeah. Or would it make more sense to say, no, well, let's launch it maybe in one country to see a couple of installs there and check D1, D7, D14 retention numbers. So let's say we are currently in closed beta. So let's say we're open now, opening the beta, and we can decide, you as an expert can tell me, Dominic, open up in 2 countries, we do install tests there, we check the figures, the numbers, and then we can scale and open up globally for a full global launch. Let's say we're in this stage, that we go on a closed test of 1 or 2 countries, because that's normally the standard approach of launching a game.
Yeah, I would say that, there will be, being me as an analyst, I would ask you a lot of questions, but I think it would take a lot of time, to be fair. So I would just say that, so first, if you're just launching a game, so how it looks from our perspective when we are working with our partners who are launching the game. So if it's like a tech launch, and if you're just willing to test whether the game, like the F2A is working, whether the people are playing, and you have a content, for example, like 30 days, and you're not expecting the money to come from it. Then you're just like testing whether it works or not, and maybe testing if you have a multiplayer, you're testing some stuff. Then you should definitely choose the countries that have At the same time, they have the low CPM and CPIs, but they have devices that you will target at the end of the day. Because if you, for example, start with a very cheap country, for example, India or Indonesia or anything like this, you will probably get different people who will play your game. They will definitely be different from, if you're, for example, at the end of the day, want to scale in the United States. You definitely don't want people with, I don't know, $100 devices to start playing your game, because the metrics you will get is very different from what you get from people in the United States, where they will be playing in the latest, on the latest Pixel, Galaxy or iPhone. So I would choose the countries, so probably some kind of European countries which are like cheap, like maybe Hungary, Slovenia, maybe something like this. They have some devices that you want players to play on, or you can also, there is an option to target, like for example, Canada is a good proxy for United States. For example, if you're a little bit more a little bit closer to launching the game and you want to test the monetization metrics, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are good proxies for United States. To not open it to United States, you just go there and you try and like understand if users are paying, if they're fine with the gameplay and something like this. So this is normally, I mean, yeah, definitely you start with buying the installs to test everything. Then we advise our partners to start the CPA on a little bit shallower event, for example, completing some level in a game, because if you're just buying installs, normally what you get a lot of cheap installs and the users that are not willing to play a game at the end of the day. If you want to go a little bit deeper, it will cost you a little bit more, but you will test more. So you go to CPA, you test whether the players are playing, then you go to like first adding some monetization there, and then testing like are the user willing to buy or not. Then you go full scale.
All right, thank you for that. Gunnar, if you mentioned at the introduction that you are not just an AI platform, but you're also publishing your own products. How does GameLight how would GameLight launch a new game that they would have developed?
Yeah. In our case, because we already have experience with previous launches, we wouldn't just start from defining which countries we want. We already know which countries we want to promote in, which channels we have that we want to promote. I think with the new ones, obvious go-to is usually Google we start with, and we also want to launch Meta and video networks that work usually. For us, it's a bit different because the rewarded channels are our competition, so to say. But at the same time, I think rewarded channels would be the best if you have, in general, a game that you're launching. Because, so what also Vasily mentioned earlier is the AI algorithms, and you usually can get better results than humans sitting and optimizing campaigns, which is also what we see on GameLight. We don't have any manual targetings and so on. We have an algorithm that does all of it. And I think with those, it goes above certain network, especially if it's like video networks and so on, where you need managed accounts, you need to find the content. It's not just easy to launch a campaign on a club, and it's like months-long negotiations with them and signing contracts. So it's, if you are a small studio, they might not even approve it. So there are minimum levels that they ask you, that you have to be at least this level to start working with us. So choosing some different networks also that would push your game's engagement would be good. For example, in this case, I would put rewarded network. Okay, first I would start with Google Meta. I would put rewarded networks above video networks because you can also get very different quality. For example, video networks would have similar curve you would get with Google. With video networks, because there are extra reward, with rewarded networks, because there's extra reward for users to pass certain difficult levels and to progress in the game, you would usually see higher ARPU and ROAS, which would be important because we also see sometimes games fail on traditional channels, but they work on rewarded, so partners would stop everything else, they would stop video networks, Google, Facebook, and they would run rewarded because that's the only place where it worked. So
can you explain a bit more rewarded networks, how they work? Because I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with that, and even terms like ARPUs and ROAS, and so maybe you should always add what that means so the audience can follow along.
Sure. So rewarded, I would split into two parts. One is pre-install rewards, which are happening for watching ads to get rewards, right? This is applying new entire source and so on. This is not what we meant. This is just users get rewards before the install, and it doesn't impact the quality afterwards. When you say rewarded networks, you usually mean rewards that happen after the install. So usually those are happening within platforms. So like in case of GameLot, we have apps. Users download our app to test different games. Once they download the game within our platform, there will be a certain page for them where they can check their games. We tell them, hey, finish level 5, 10, 20, 50, and so on to get certain rewards. Those are the ones that they're called, so to say, loyalty platforms. So we create some loyalty platform for your games to bring users back and to help them go through the funnel better and with more higher engagement and higher retention. So usually when you say rewarded platforms, you don't mean other ones. So even though there is reward, usually you would mean rewarded UA, which are from loyalty platforms.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. In terms of acquisition costs for rewarded networks versus traditional networks, what would you say, how is the pricing different if you're talking about developed markets versus emerging markets, or whatever segment of the market that you're focusing on? Can you share a bit of those insights?
Yeah, we usually focus in countries like US, Europe, Japan, Korea. Price depends on the games that is there. For example, ad monetized games would have usually lower monetization, so they would have lower bids. If it's an IAP game, they can usually bid higher because there's also longer term ROAS curve. In comparison with traditional ones, I would say again depends on what you compare. For example, if you run Google install campaigns, you can get like very cheap users, but they will also not do much. If you do CPI campaigns, ROAS campaigns, your CPI will go higher, but your ROAS will go higher too. So it depends on what you compare. I would say it's more comparable to CPE ROAS campaigns on traditional networks bit-wise, because usually reward channels wouldn't just run install campaigns, because if users just get rewards for downloading, they won't do anything afterwards. So you want usually to optimize for deeper funnel events, and those are more comparable to the bids of CPE ROAS campaigns on traditional channels.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of marketing campaigns that you guys did all in the past, is there one campaign which sticks out as a massive success where you were like totally surprised? If yes, can you share that a bit? And would you happen to be able to explain what made that specific campaign such a big success? Maybe Imran, if you have one that you did in the past and
Sure.
would be able to share.
So so there are some campaigns in terms of, you're talking about gaming, because I might not have a use case for gaming exactly, but I can talk from the lens of other products like a B2C product, especially in banking. So just to give you a perspective, as a challenge we were launching our travel card, which was our Skyward cards for the bank. And we are talking about building audiences using traditional channels, using channels on the Meta. But something which really made the campaign go viral, and it was nominated for a lot of global award, it was how we used a music platform to connect with users buying a banking product. So the example is that, and that example could be used across. So we built up all the top 5 or top 6 tourist countries from the UAE. And what are those? So we got a list of countries like Turkey, we got a list like India was there, Pakistan was there, US was there. And we tied up with Spotify, and it was a connection using the platform Adara, where we tried to create music which resonates with those countries. So like for Turkey, we created a music around our campaign in the concept of those dancing dervish. So and for India, we created music around the tuk-tuk which is there. And that really created a buzz in terms of the user, because usually banking, sometimes credit card becomes a very boring activity, so you get a card. But when it was connected with travel in a way with music, and especially on Spotify, we got so many users who stopped listening to music and they went to the bank side to apply for the card, thinking that the way it was packaged. So that was something, and it was nominated for the FE's award in Europe. So that stood out as one example. And the same thing, which after hearing one example comes to my mind, is once we create our audiences, so like the example which you mentioned about gaming. We could say that you have identified your country, you have identified your persona, you have identified your competition. There are platforms like InMobi and Memob which provides apographic data. So for example, if your game is A segment and these are my 5 competitors game, I can target based people who have downloaded the competition game and showcase my inventory to them. So those kind of things in terms of building audiences differ. One last example I will add, like in Pioneer, we try to capture SMBs. When it comes to B2B, we try to capture SMBs, the decision makers. And one of the big market is people who are based out of India, especially for services. They travel to the US because where actually their clients are based. So we created a travel segment with them, and we try to identify people who are traveling business class more than 3 times in a year. So which eliminates, so these are signals which we get on various digital platforms where we can build audiences beyond the business personas which we have. So these things help to give that edge and niche to any campaign which we are looking to build.
Gunnar, anything that stood out in from one of your previous campaigns which totally surprised you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say surprise, but I can give examples from the other direction that our partners worked with us. That's let me pick. Okay, I can give shorter one for one of them and longer for other explanation.
Sure.
So for first of all, the rewarded channels. I mean, because we are rewarded, you can usually see not everywhere, but quite some scale. And last year, no, this year, beginning of this year, we're running special campaigns for Superplay, and we managed to first we used our AI algorithm for there and set up everything based on our recommendations to reach their goals, and we managed to scale them to the level of spending 500,000 every day, so on a daily scale, which is huge within mobile gaming and within reward, especially or any other. And I can't share too many details because I only can share what is open in case studies. And another example is from Joy City. Also a very big South Korean game publisher. We ran with them for more than 2 years now, I think, for multiple games. And what we did is, the example is how it works with AI algorithms is that we don't do anymore those average numbers. We take a lot of data points from the users that we collect also from partners, and this is all analyzed in real time. And because this is analyzed in real time, we can optimize real time too. So instead of waiting for weeks or months to get data and then to adjust and come up with something else, you feed the algorithm with the data and let it optimize and find the best users for every game based on who is the user, demographics, what kind of games they play, when they play, how much they play, and so on. So a lot of data that's fed into the algorithm, and it analyzes to find the best ones for each game. For the users, and additionally there's also a reward algorithm which analyzes which rewards to give for each user, when to give, what type of rewards would be the best, how much rewards to be, and all of this together helps to optimize campaigns to the maximum level. And with this we managed to receive, for example, 3 times, 4 times higher ARPU in case of Joy City, which is like, ARPU is like average revenue per user, so how much you would make with one user, which also defines how much you can spend because you want your spend to be CPI to be lower than ARPU. This increased the ARPUs by a lot, which pushed the whole game KPIs up, because your game, a huge portion of your game makes like 4 times ARPU, which also means you can now spend more on user acquisition and scale your game further. And that's happening because we use AI algorithms instead of simply manually doing some targetings that we think are the best.
Yeah, interesting. Vasily, can you share one of the experiences from one of the campaigns that kind of like surprised you, blew you away in terms of the results, or anything that is out of the ordinary?
I would say that it's a tricky one. As far as we don't run our campaigns, it's our partners who are like running it, and same as we have. So we cannot share all the details. But yeah, there was a time back in the days when there was no. So the hyper-casual market, which for the audience, I mean, maybe I think most of you know, like hyper-casual is the games that are monetizing primarily on in-app ads. They don't have a lot of in-app purchases, so they're like monetizing by showing the ads to users. Simple gameplay and something like this. So one of our big gaming partners, they were, it was I think 2.5 or maybe 3 years ago it was. So they were buying. They were mostly buying on the CPI basis, because essentially this is very logical. If you have a very easy game and it doesn't have any in-app events in terms of like purchases, then you buy installs. However, when we had an idea and it wasn't in our models yet, so we have a little bit moving forwards is like we have now the bidding on ad revenue events. Previously we didn't. So we just decided that we will like manipulate a little bit in our like analytical system, in their analytical system, and we will pass the event from the user who is watching some ads, some revenue, attribute some revenue to him, and then we will try to like optimize towards this event. Surprisingly, it went very well. I mean, so it helped them to scale 3 times, and they were scaling from, I would say, like millions to like 3 times millions per month of spend. So it's not like 500K a day. They were on this scale with us at some point later. But yeah, it was a very good success, and it was just about, like, for example, it's about finding a creative way of using the existing like tools, options on different networks, because at the end of the day, so we're Google, and we're not very fast in terms of like reacting to what market wants. This is definitely, and sometimes we introduce something first, and sometimes we're waiting for a lot of time to make sure it's viable and it's definitely needed for developers. And this was the case. I mean, so that revenue bidding was introduced like only 1 year ago, but so for most big clients that were bidding on this fake, I mean not fake, but events from the ads revenue, but not purely like manually, like they were sent manually. They were just transferring the money from one product to another, which was very good.
I would like to share something as well, what we did for our game. Mainly because it's very different from traditional advertising stories, and the results were pretty spectacular. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with Telegram minigames that are enjoying obviously a lot of momentum at the moment, similar to WeChat minigames and Line in Southeast Asia as well. So what we did was for our real game, for our mobile shooter game, Stray Shot, we built like a mini game inside Telegram, and then we started to advertise that mini game because it's a live game. You can play it today. It's obviously an idle game. It's like a clicker game, and we started to advertise that, and we checked different funnels. So we checked obviously Meta, we checked Google, we checked TikTok, even Snapchat. I think we did a little test in there. But by far the best channel was, unsurprisingly, to advertise inside Telegram, right? Because you get users seeing your game inside Telegram and then installing or opening the game inside Telegram. And there's like ad networks that now got established inside Telegram. One is called Adsgram. And Adsgram has like lots of collaborations with other Telegram minigames where they can then advertise essentially your game. And the results were absolutely stunning. Like CPM cost, so that the cost per mil, which is the cost for 1,000 impressions. I mean, if you target a developed market like US, for example, right, or South Korea or Japan, like these high expensive, high CPM countries, I don't know. I mean, maybe Vasily, can you share a bit if you would advertise in the USA? What's a normal expected CPM cost, and then we can compare to Adsgram. And this is not as scalable, of course, as Google. But how much would you normally expect to pay for 1,000 impressions?
I would say $25 to $40, depending on which channel you're on. I mean,
yes,
it's very different. But yeah.
Right. So $25 to $40 for 1,000 impressions. In Adsgram, we paid less than $1 CPM, like mind blowing, right? And then we got installs like players that at least tried the game once for as little as 3 cents. Right, like pretty spectacular for that, right? So a completely new channel, something very, very, I would say niche at the moment. Although Telegram is gaining massive momentum, right? I mean, there are close to 1 billion users now, and it's certainly something that I think is worth checking. What we're going to do next is obviously from this mini game, we are hoping that we can try to convert a lot of users to the real mobile game, right? To also push organic installs then in Google Play and iOS, right? So this is kind of like a bit of the strategy. I have no idea how this will convert. We haven't done it yet, and I'm very. I don't speak about stuff that I haven't tested yet, so I cannot say anything on that. But it's a very interesting funnel, I would say, and I think would make a lot of sense to at least check it if you're developing something in mobile.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Using one platform in terms of close community to create a mini game. So it's a very interesting thing.
I mean, the mini game per se is interesting because I don't know if some people have heard of Hamster Combat and Notcoin and some other projects. Hamster Combat was one of the fastest growing games ever, right? Like they grew from 0 to 300 million monthly active users in as little as, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, right? 300 million. Now, having said that, I think it's important to understand that in these kind of games, it's similar to rewarded ads, where you get a reward as a player. So the motivation is always, okay, I play this game and then I get something called an airdrop, which is like a cryptocurrency reward for that. So what happens is there's probably a lot of farming, right? There's probably a lot of bot farms in Bangladesh or whatever countries where they are trying to mine that currency later on. But nevertheless, the amount of real users that they had was massive, right? And momentum is really, really big there. But let's switch gears for a second. We spoke a lot about specific user acquisition channels. Would you say it's possible to name one of the most common pitfalls when advertising, when trying to get users? Where would you be very careful? Where have you maybe overspent and in hindsight thought, hey, wow, this could have been done smarter? Maybe Gunay, maybe you can share something in that sense.
I'm thinking of where we spent. There are quite a few that wouldn't be a good idea now to do. In general, I think the most important is to treat channels differently. We will also see this with our UA managers, but also our partners, so both ways that we promote games. If you get certain results on Google, you expect the same thing now from every other channel. Or if you have organic results where users finish events with certain percentage, you expect the same to be everywhere else, which is not true. Usually you would get very different results between channels, between organics or rewarded channels and so on. And I think being ready for this and knowing what to expect is important, and also being prepared. Like you can launch slow scale to understand the curve of the user and how they're going to behave. And you should also then have an open mind that maybe one curve is like this and other one might be differently, but it might end up on the same place for your ROAS if your your goal is ROAS positive, and as long as it ends there, you can then scale the channel, and it doesn't matter how your curve lands eventually, because you are reaching your final goal.
Imran, from your vast background in digital marketing, any regrets?
I will not say regrets, but that's for digital marketers, one thing is that when we calculate our ROI, the attribution model which we apply to calculate their ROI is predominantly last click. And that is where we are not able to see the true power of a channel. Like, I'm a big football fan, and I really appreciate the concept of assisted conversion, because all the channels work towards, I'm sure Google takes away a lot of last click attribution towards them, but there are so many other channels which have created that first awareness or the first click or the first engagement with the game. So if we invest into a model where we can improve our attribution modeling to a data driven, where we can at least see 4 or 5, 6 different parts, we will have a very different answer. And sometimes to get to that answer, that becomes a pitfall where we try to stop a channel where we say, okay, programmatic did not bring me anything, so let's stop programmatic. And then what we find is we see a drop in search coming up because the awareness which was coming from programmatic was not attributable. So that is one aspect which we should take into our media strategy and media planning. Even spikes in organic during a big campaign is not correctly attributed.
Okay, interesting. Vasily, do you mind sharing?
I would double down on what Imran said about the attribution, and it is like a broader topic on how different companies are treating marketing at the end of the day. And so there are a lot of experiments around branding, for example, in gaming. And the problem for gaming, we've seen a lot of examples from our clients, from the industry, where everybody wants to achieve performance goals out of branding campaigns, which doesn't work like this. I mean, it doesn't work directly. So, for example, if you're buying the must-have on YouTube, which is like if if you open the YouTube on mobile, it's the first ad you will see.
16,000.
If you're buying it, for example, for US and expect the user to land directly to your game and play it and pay in it, this is not what you get. This is very different, and this is very related to attribution, because what it makes is it grows your brand, and it grows like awareness of people who were probably not in the market for your game, because something that there are a lot of people that you can reach using the performance channels, but there are also a lot of people who are not probably playing the games right now. And when you're buying users, for example, in AppLovin, in like Unity, in Meta, in Google, mainly you will serve in the ad mob or anything specifically served in gaming. So you're buying users from gaming to play another game. But when you want users from another who are not playing the games to play your game, you have to like go extra mile, and it will cost you more, but it will probably be very valuable for you in the long term. But the problem is that the correct measurement of this is very difficult, and it's very different from directly like having the AppsFlyer attribute the click and last click and everything is fine. You don't have to think about it. And I am also a very big fan of data-driven attribution models. In web, to be fair, it's used for a long period of time, and most big retailers and everybody in the market are using data-driven models, so they're distributing the budgets according to these models. In gaming, I don't think we're there yet. I think that it will change in the coming like years if privacy will not kill this. To be fair, again, this is like a big topic at the end of the day. But if privacy will not kill all the touches you have with the user, I would say that data-driven models is definitely something worth exploring. But it is mainly on like a very late stage of your development. So I don't think that starting your game, you should think about how would branding affect my game. I would say that it is worth exploring when you have like a big game and you are scaling from 100k per day to like 300k per day. Something like this.
Sorry, I want to jump in. Could you elaborate how data-driven attribution on web works?
It works pretty simple. I mean, it just records all the touches you have with your user, and then it distributes the weights of each touch. I mean, definitely everything that happens closer to the last touch has more weight than something that happened, for example, a month ago. But this, for example, impression that user have seen like 2 weeks before downloading the game in a search, for example, or it will have some weight. It will probably have, I don't know, 5% weight, but it will have it, and you will attribute some ROAS towards this channel, and you will get better understanding on how did this impact your marketing strategy at all. So, and this works. I mean, there is a way to do it right now in app marketing, but it costs a lot. It costs a lot of resources, mainly analytical and development, and also you have to adjust to new reality if you get this, and also privacy is not helping there. I mean, it's the elephant in the room. If you don't have a lot of signals from like interactions of users, you don't have like all the picture. But yeah.
Gune, is Gamelight doing something very different from what Vasily mentioned with their data-driven approach, where they give weights to certain touch points of the users? What's the secret of Gamelight, if you're allowed to share, of course?
This is not something that's handled by us usually, because attribution is handled by the MMPs, so we can't decide ourselves that, hey, we had so much impact on this user playing your game. If the last click is not done by us, in this case it will be attributed to some other channel, and it's done usually by an AppsFlyer, just Singular Mobile they work with. So this is something that we don't touch. We just might lose the user because maybe they saw it in the game, they wanted to play, but then somewhere else, then we will simply not be attributed.
Imran, we spoke about data-driven marketing approaches. Can you share some of your experience working in the digital marketing banking area?
So 2 years or 3 years back, when we were putting the customer journey in terms of which channel to optimize, or we say campaign optimization. So we invested into a data-driven model. So now in terms of the previous organization I was working, we moved away from a last click attribution to a data-driven attribution, where we were tracking the channel mix up to 7 touch points. So we created algorithm in terms of providing weightage over a 30-day look-back window, where in the last 30 days, where did the user first saw my ad, where was his first click, and then when he converted, so which channels contributed to 30%, 40% of his interest toward my product to convert. So and it showed a very interested lens. So all the channels, so if in a mix we had 7 or 8 channels, you would see programmatic came out as a channel which for every conversion was having a 30% weightage, or we call it assisted conversion. So they were having 30% of assisted conversions. And then we also created a customer journey, that because retargeting or remarketing also comes into picture, like what is the number of impression, or how many times you should retouch the customer. So one interesting thing we came out, till a user reached 6th touch point, we saw a dip. And then usually we stop engaging with that customer because he has not taken the right action. But then what we saw in certain channels, that from the 13th impression onwards, he again started to engage, because then he show value. So when we are plotting into a media campaign in terms of journey for a consumer, we increase our retargeting matrix from 6 and we took it to the 13 out of the 14 impression, because the users which were coming from the 13th and the 14th touch points, their LTVs were higher. Their conversion rates were, I will say LTVs were not higher, but their conversion rates were faster. Yeah. From clicking to conversion was much faster in terms of downloading a bank's app, applying for the product. So data driven helped us optimize our budgets in a very programmatic manner, not just based on a hunch that okay, let's put all the money on channel A or a channel B. Yeah.
So don't you think it's a bit misleading though with DSPs? Because I'm not a big fan of DSPs, because I think it's often a bit of waste of money. Might be because we also look at last click and so on.
Yes.
But what I'm thinking of, DSPs traffic usually come a lot with some banners in the bottom of the app, so you don't actually engage and you probably didn't see and you just got attributed.
When we look into advertising, so there are different kinds of inventory which is available. Like I'm someone not a big fan of run on site, so I don't buy run on site onto them. So we go into with certain premium inventory which is there, and whenever it comes to especially mobile, the size which if I'm talking about, so I always go for a 300 by 250. I will not go for those leaderboards banners at the bottom, so because it's very difficult to get anything out of them. So we are very particular in terms of what kind of inventory we are buying in a DSP, and then with the DSP, when we are using it, you have to add certain contextual or native ability to it, like especially from how does a competition react, or how does a customer reacts if we are talking about games. So like what are the behavior, or what are the times when a consumer will be playing games, and what are those set times. So and then create your campaign around that. So you'll definitely see a spike, but again you have to use a different attribution modeling to see the success of the DSP, because even if we look into keyword search or monthly searches, a brand or a game has X, so how do I increase those searches? So the question, so that could also be an attribution. If on a month my searches or my brand searches have gone up, spiked on Google, it has to be because of not people playing, but more people are now typing my game. So if more people are typing they would have seen or engaged with the game in some point or the other. They might have not clicked in that session, but then they're coming back on a platform where they can search about the game. So that is also an attribution we can give some credit while we are creating how to see DSPs performing.
Okay, I think we have time for one final question. In today's age that is certainly driven by key opinion leaders, influencers, in gaming specifically streamers, how important is marketing with streamers, and how would you combine those activities with other marketing activities that fit well together?
I can start. In general, I think it's a very good addition to the UA mix to run influencer campaigns. It's a bit difficult to analyze, so especially if you do it on a low scale. So if you are not a big company, a small company, and you have limited budgets, you might end up wasting it if you run influencer campaign, especially if you're a mobile game, because if you run with some YouTubers, half of it will go to, I mean, I don't know if it's half or not, but part of it will go to desktop, which is kind of wasted for you. They might search for the game on the phone, but it's not a direct click and go to the store. Or if you have only iOS or Android, another half is gone. So it could be a bit wasteful, but if you have larger budgets and you can do more of creating a buzz about your product and running multiple large influencers at the same time, also smaller ones, mid-size, it can bring definitely more benefits. But if you focus on performance marketing with limited budgets, I think it would be more of a waste of money potentially. So it depends on the product and timing.
Vasily, any ideas on how to combine influencer marketing with performance marketing?
So there are several cases when the companies who were collaborating with influencers, they were using this influencer-made creatives in their ads, which work pretty well. And so I think we expect some improvements in this sphere. I think we expect more of this to come in future, because so what we've seen, we've made recently the research together with GWI. And we've asked people how likely they're to follow their favorite creator. And not unsurprisingly, the younger the generation, the more likely they're to follow their favorite influencer or anything like this. At the end of the day, I do agree with Gunait about that. It is very tricky. So if it's definitely not something that you want to start with. It's something that you want to continue doing when you are on a big scale, or if you are very, very, very sure in your product and you see it has a lot of viability, something like this. I mean, if you see a lot of viral potential in it, there was success, for example, from Among Us or something like this, which was mainly driven by influencers, not paid marketing at the point. But yeah, I would say that it is definitely a way to combine it. But what you should look at it, what we've seen as a bad example in some cases, is that when some companies are collaborating with influencer, they're buying integration within his, for example, video, but they are not looking at the legal terms, and at the end of the day, they don't have rights to use it in the ad. This is what you have to look at. I mean, definitely, if you wanna double down afterwards, if you wanna use this influencer as your in your performance campaigns, you should have this permission. And this is something that you should look at when you're collaborating with these people. I mean, it's not that something was. I mean, there was no lie from any side. There was just no misunderstanding. And at the end of the day, they couldn't run the campaign on performance marketing just because they didn't have any rights. This was a bad example there.
Yeah, interesting. Imran, do you want to add something to that? If not, I would open up the round for questions.
I think they have added. I'm also of the similar opinion that once the product is mature, we should look at this platform in terms of community or influencers.
I think I would actually add one thing based on what you told. So on TikTok, there's a platform. They have TTCC, I think, called. You can work with influencers, and you can kind of create a campaign, and a lot of influencers can apply to it, 20, 30, 40 videos. So with one-time campaign creation, you get a lot of ads and directly attached to your campaign that you can then promote and then track the results. So I think this is the closest to performance you can do with, so to say, influencer marketing. It's not directly that, but it can be connected to the profile of the influencer. You get UGC videos from them, and you can then directly attach to your ad and promote them. This would be an easier to-go option than running with large YouTube influencers.
Interesting. Okay. With this said, maybe if there's any questions from the audience that you want to ask, anything about the topics we spoke.
Just one on slightly on the lighter vein, and you can choose not to answer it. But any ideas how I can get my 8-year-old son to stop looking at influencers, streamers on YouTube for hours together?
The opposite of that, okay. I don't know.
Sorry, can you repeat the
My son, who's 8 years old, spends hours looking at content generated by such influencers.
Yeah.
How can I stop him or get him to reduce it?
Disconnect his internet, but...
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there is no point of... I would say we're definitely not the people who are.
We're trying to sell you that, you know.
Which want to sell you that. I mean, this is very, very like how to stop your son is definitely how you like are willing to stop your son from doing anything. You can just take his phone from him, maybe, and maybe not, or maybe you should just. But again, this is definitely something that is happening, and this is more. The older generations are not looking at like they have their own influencers, but they are not so influenced by these people. But this is again, this is how they say about this. For example, if your favorite influencer, be it I don't know Messi, Ronaldo, or something, or anyone, will tell you to do something, maybe you will do it. And this is happening in each generation, but we have different influencers. So I would say that there is no way to stop it.
Anyway, if
Yeah, I have only one question about Google Sandbox. Do you mind, Vasily?
Privacy sandbox.
Yeah, privacy sandbox. I mean, like, we're talking about clicks and conversions here, and here's represents from Gamelight, and which is rewarded in traffic. So, like, this probably comes in the next year. So, is it like blocking our conversions in the future, like this kind of guides?
I cannot comment on this. To be fair, I mean everything is available on the platform. So there is a reason for me not to be able to comment on this, and part of this reason is that I don't know a lot of things, because the privacy sandbox is developed specifically by people who are on this team, and there is a Chinese wall inside. I mean, we don't have a lot of knowledge of what is happening there. We're learning at the same pace as you're learning about this. So you know about something. There is an open the privacy sandbox. There is a website about this. You will be able to see all the developments, all the stuff in there, and there is no further knowledge inside Google apart from this. This is how it works.
Okay.
all right. Well, with this, if there's no other questions, then I would like to thank the panelists for sharing your insights. Thank you for participating, and I wish you a good HIT conference. Thank you.
Thank you.